welcome this morning. We'll be going through today just a quick overview of SmartSuite, some of the basics, and then we'll be able to jump into building solutions and answering questions on solutions as we get through. And just close a couple of things here, get back to the page. Okay, Sheila, give me a sense from your perspective of how familiar you are with SmartSuite. We have just a few power users that are on this morning. I just want to make sure that we don't go over any content that doesn't make sense for you.
Okay, so I'm pretty new to SmartSuite. I don't know about your power users. Hopefully one day I'll be a power user, but today I'm pretty new.
Okay, I tell you what, we'll start with kind of the 5-minute overview of just some of the basics to make sure that you haven't missed something that's available, and then we'll just jump right into how to think about and create new solutions as you get started.
Okay.
So I think just some terminology that I like to go through typically is this opening page. We call this your home workspace. So this provides a listing of the solutions that you've been given access to. A solution is really just a process or a project that you're looking to manage. You can have an unlimited number of solutions for each of the plans that are here. Each of these solutions, you have the ability to access control that to the very specific people that you want to have access. And then you can further limit that, the type of access that you would like people to have access to, just particular records that might be in there, just particular fields that are available, particular applications. So we'll go through each of those. If you're not familiar with the favorites concept, you have the ability in your My Workspace here to take any element that's here and click on the icon in the right corner, and it will then move it up into your favorites. And then each person has their own ability to organize the favorites in whatever fashion makes sense for you. So it's pretty typical for an organization that would have 15 or 20 different solutions here for individual users to then set those up into favorites for themselves. If you're trying to search for a solution, like I'm just looking for my projects, you can just start typing and we'll filter both in your favorites and in the workspace at the same time to help you find that. And then we also provide another view type of your homepage that's mainly for people that are interested in just understanding the number of people that have access to that solution and then the number of applications that are there. So just a little bit more detailed information here. One of the features that's used quite often that people don't know about typically until they find it is Power Search. And Power Search does a couple of things. The first one is it provides a listing of all of the pages and things that you've accessed, whether it be records or reports, SmartSuite. I think we do the last 25 that's available here. So this is your recent history. So a lot of users come in, and if there's things that you need to do over and over, they just do a single click under the Power Search, click on the item, and drill right into the content that's available that's there. And I'll cover a little more in Power Search in a minute. Start Items is another item that is basically, it's a way for you to create your own custom menu on the side. So you can go into any record or report and you can flag that as a start item and it will show up on your list that's here. And then you have the ability to pin items in the list to the top and then to reorder the items that are here. It's very useful for people that are coming in doing the same things over and over. And they'll just in one click pull up their start items and go right into their work queues that are available. My Work, this is a demo account, so I don't have any assignments here, but My Work allows you to see every task that's been assigned to you, along with the due date and the status. And it helps you keep track of what you need to do today, tomorrow, next week, and then after that. And then it also allows you to click and view a series of closed tasks as well. So things that you've completed over the last year, task-wise, will show up. You also have the ability to enter your own personal tasks. You can enter tasks and actually assign them to anyone. It's most commonly used for personal tasks that might not relate to a particular project, just more personal to-dos. So you can enter that and it will show up in your actual work queue as well. And then the last item I'll notice here is just the member directory. The member directory allows you to see every person that's in the end with their profile information. The green dot shows that they're online. The red dot shows that they're not online in this particular account right now. So if I click on Pete, I can see the details of Pete's profile. What's interesting here, though, is I can come into search, and the search searches through all of the information that's in here. So if I was looking for somebody that had a Microsoft certification, I start to type, I can quickly find that particular certification across a group. And with just 5 people, it doesn't make as much sense. But if you have a larger group of people, it's just easy for you to find information, especially if you're needing to schedule people for things. If you click on the display all, we also show a series of predefined reports that allow you to see people by department, by company, maybe by physical location that they're at. If I want to see a list of people that are just online or offline, maybe I want to have a conversation, I can see if they're online. We also show it by role, so you can actually see who in your account has which roles, from administrators to solution creators to just general users that are available. Interesting one was requested is time zones. So it allows you to understand the time zone of each of the people based on your current time of where you're at today. And then there's some fun features like birthdays that allow you to celebrate birthdays by month within the organization. It doesn't include the year of birth, just includes the day there, but it's just meant more as an HR component to allow you to easily collaborate, more easily collaborate with people that's there. Then the last item here is just what we call your user profile menu. This is how you get to all of the information in your actual profile and how you can update that. So I can click on personal information, see the details in my particular profile. I can control the cover image. I can add my own picture. And then you can choose to share as much information in this personal section as you want inside of your account, or not at all. It's completely optional and up to you. And then next most important thing is just notification settings. So this allows you to go in and just begin to set if the types of notifications that you want to receive inside of SmartSuite. If you don't want to receive kind of some of the community newsletter and product updates, you can turn those off. But those are turned on by default for each person that comes in. And then under email, you can get very specific. If you feel like you're getting bombarded with too many emails, you can come in and say, maybe I only want to be notified when something's been assigned to me. Or maybe a record that but by default, all of these are on so that all the notifications will show up both in your notification panel and you'll receive that via email as well. And your notification panel just relates to any notification inside of the system that relates to you being assigned work or being mentioned, and just some system notifications as well. Let's click into one of our favorites. We'll go into a project that's here. And my screen is, hopefully this fixes itself. Zoom is having a problem with my screen resolution, and it's only showing part of the screen here. But just to understand the basics of a solution. So my project is actually a solution. The solution is just a collection of what we call applications that are down below. Each of these applications is its own unique set of fields and information that you want to collect. And then you have the ability to link these applications to each other inside of this solution. But what's unique about SmartSuite is we also allow you to link to other solutions outside of my project. So any other solution in your account that you have access to, you can actually create a link to that. And then we manage the access rights on both sides, so that if a user that does have access to my projects, but doesn't have access maybe to marketing, everything will show up with the exception of that link, and they won't be able to actually click on the link to see the details on the other side of that. Inside of a solution here, the first main concept is what we call views. So we offer about 9 different view types that you can select from. A view is basically just a report. It's just a view into the information that you've created for a particular application. To create a new report, you just scroll to the bottom and click on Add New. And let me see if we can refresh here, and if the screen resolution will fix itself. There we go. So I can click in here, click to add a new view, and we'll go through the view types in just a minute as we're creating your first solution. There's a few new ones at the bottom that you might not have seen, or dashboards and forms that we'll talk about just briefly. The information across the top here, we call the toolbar. This just allows you to control the information that you want to see inside of the current view. So I click on the fields display. This is showing me every field that is available in the projects app for me to select. And I can select something or move it off the page just by clicking on each side of that to create the information that I actually want to see. I can sort on information. I can filter by any field that is available in this view. I can group by information. In this case, we're grouping by stage, but I could change that grouping maybe by due date that's in there. We'll go back to the stage here. I can add spotlight colors, which we'll show in a minute, where I can highlight certain rows of information in different colors using some rules that I put in place, or I can do it at the field level as well, where I would just want to highlight particular fields of information that are available here. I can also control the row size and change the format from small, medium, large, extra large, or auto size based on the content. Most people start with small, and then based on the content, they move up. To click into a record and actually see the details, I just click on open. This brings up the record view where I can organize the information If I'm an admin, I have the ability to move the information in any order on this particular form that I'd like to see it. I also have the ability to add sections and group fields into sections. And when I add a section, I can give a section a default state. So I could say that I want this section either open or closed by default. When you have large amounts of information that we'll look at in just a minute, this just allows you to maybe show more general information at the top and information that's not used quite as often. You put in a section and collapse it just so that you can keep the focus on kind of the main areas that you want to see. To add fields to a particular application, there's two ways to do that. You can do it inside of the form right here by just clicking on the action menu, saying that I want to add a new field. Brings up the field listing. We have 44 different field types that you can pick from. What most people do to get started, so maybe I wanted to do a single select type field, I just start typing and it narrows the list. So as you become more comfortable, that's typically how you'll find fields the fastest. Newer users to come in and actually click on explore all field types. And this gives you an overview of each available field type that you can use, from just the basics, from text and numbers and dates and percents and phones and emails and things. What's a little different with SmartSuite from some of the other products is that based on the field type, we do data validation to help ensure that the information being entered is good data for you. So we'll validate email addresses, numbers, addresses, those types of things. More collaboration fields, types of fields with ratings and votes and tags, and then more project specifics, which we're going to be talking about here, that relate to assigning things to people that have due dates and durations, and you want to track a status, maybe you want to track time associated with completing a task, those types. And then things where you want to count and roll up information or use formulas. Signatures are pretty interesting in that. Especially if you're on a mobile device, someone can actually physically sign with their finger to sign off on things that's there. So I can add fields inside of a form. I can also add fields directly from the grid view by just clicking add new field. In this case, let's say we want to add a single select. I could give it a name. I'll just keep it named single select for now. What's unique here from SmartSuite from a lot of other products as well is you can pick the view type or how you would like to view this particular field inside of reports and inside of forms. So you can either pick, in this case, a color dot with a gray background, a solid background. I could pick an actual icon and pick the color of the icon along with the name, or I could just use text. Almost all of our field types have 3 to 4 different selection options, so you can really customize the information on the way that you want to see it. And if I would go to enter some values, I could go to each value and I can actually pick the color on how that I want that field to be displayed. So I could say red, blue, and maybe more of a yellow that's there will auto select for you if you don't do that. And then in a lot of fields, or in some fields that we have like selections, you have the ability to determine if users can actually enter new values as they're entering data in, or if they're constrained to just the list of values that you have turned on. And then in this particular case, I picked this field type because I wanted to show some of the advanced options that are available. Click the expand icon and come to advanced. Here I can see my choices, but over here on the side, I could determine maybe if I want to add a value to each choice. So this is pretty common that if you are doing some type of scoring or formulas based on different values that are being entered, you can just add the values here and then you could just sum them up. It just makes it easier. And if you want to add descriptions, you can turn on the description. So each time the field is displayed for selection, it would also include the description that you've added. So both of those are turned off by default just to keep it simple. And in some cases, if you're doing just some of the basics where I need a list of age groupings, you can select that and we'll bring that information directly in for you. And this list gets updated as people come back and find more information that's just kind of default information that they'd always like to have. The countries and continents are pretty common for the select list that are there. So I'm going to cancel out of that and not save. That's here. So now that we understand the basics, let's just jump in and begin to build out a solution. So there's 2 ways to build a solution. If you are an admin or a solution creator, you'll see this new solution at the bottom. I can start with 2 ways. I can start with the template, or I can start from scratch. The template just brings up a listing of best practice solutions that we've created, And it's a great way for you to get started. So most people come in and either do a find template, or they pick a particular category. They find something that's pretty close to what they want, and then they go in and tailor that to fit their that's there. That happens probably 80% of the time when you select a solution. The other 20% of the time, people come in and say, I want to create something from scratch, which we'll do right now. So when I create from scratch, the first thing that happens is it takes me right to the page to enter a name for my solution. So I'm just going to say Jon Projects as a starting point. I'm not crazy about the purple color, so I'm going to pick maybe a green. I can pick an icon. I can do a search for icon. So if I'm looking for something that's more project related, maybe I'll pick this icon. And that's it for me to get started with the solution that's there. The first thing that happens is we automatically load one application in the solution for you. We name it application 1. And in my case, maybe I am wanting to create, since it's projects, maybe I want a list of projects. So I'm going to say I want to name this first application a project. And then it lets me determine what fields, or pick the fields that I would like to have displayed in this first project. We auto load 4 fields that are commonly used in most projects or processes, from an assignment, setting a priority, selecting a status, and entering a due date. You can remove those fields if you don't want to use them by just opening the menu and saying delete field. And then yes, I want to delete, and it just removed it. To add a field, just like we did, I could say maybe I want to add a date field. As simple as maybe I just want to keep it called date. I could pick the display format that I want from a pretty compact view, more of a standard view where we're actually going to give you the name of the day of the month, and then the long view that's going to give you the day, the month, and the day associated with that. So I'm going to pick the long display, say add field, and now that field type has just been added. So I go through this process for all of the fields of information that I want to collect for a project. The next thing I probably want to do is, if I'm doing a project, I probably want to have a series of tasks. So maybe I set up a task application. Let's say maybe I want to track milestones. Maybe I do some status reports. Maybe I want to track the staff that I have. So it's that simple to set the base structure up. This is pretty typical on how somebody would first start thinking about a project. Is they think about the high level items that they want, and then you go into each item, begin to select the fields that you want to have in place. So I'm going to pick task to drill into it. Since I haven't added any data, nothing is showing up, it brings me to a blank form. In this case, the first thing that most people like to do is add a section that's here. So I could say add section. It just adds it at the top. And most of the time, people have something called general information, something similar to that they like to include in that section. And the second thing that happens quite often is, if you, for your title field, maybe you want to have it span both columns that you have here instead of just a single column. So I could expand that. So now I have just a title, a description, and some base information at the bottom. Me personally, I like to move the description right under some of the details that's in place, that's there. And then I usually have the due date and the status up at the top. So this is just your personal preference on how you would like to see the information that's available here. To add a new field while I'm on the form, again, I just click on the action menu, and I can do 2 things. I can duplicate an existing field that maybe has all the settings that I want, and I just want to change a few things, or I can add a new field. So in this case, I'll just do a simple number that's in place. For the number field type, right out of the gate, it's just a whole number, but you have the ability to set the precision on that particular field. I typically set 2 decimal precision that's there. And then you can decide if you want to allow negative numbers. For most number type field types, we also give the ability to include a prefix and a suffix associated with that to maybe tell a little bit more information about what you're actually counting. So maybe in this case, I'm counting a list of items that's there. So it just creates the field and it shows the item to the left that's here. I can just go right back into modify field settings, make any change. Maybe I want to turn that off, change the precision back to a whole number, update the field. Everything happens in real time as you make the change to move things here. Any questions from anybody at this point? I'm zipping through some of the things pretty quick, but any specific questions? Okay.
Hi, Jon. I'm sorry. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
If you change an existing field, how does it affect all the other records?
If you change the, like I just did with the precision that's
Yeah.
here?
Yes.
Yeah. So for a number field, the reality is we we store the number in the background in the full number, and you're changing the display that's there. So if you entered it in with 4 decimals and then you change it to be a whole number, the 4 decimals are still going to be in the background. We're only going to show it as a whole number though. And if somebody types in 10.2, we'll just show 10 that's there. Let's go to priority, which is a single select, which is a little better one. So if I come in here and I change this from a color dot to a full color, it changes that in every record at that time. So now every time this is displayed, it will show up in the full color mode.
Okay, but it doesn't affect the data that's entered.
It does
per
not.
se. Okay.
Correct, it does not. And let's go back to a project here, and I'm going to add just a text area field type. Pretty simple. This just allows you to type text without any rich text formatting that's in it. What happens quite often is once somebody sets up a text area, we'll drill into the record to actually see it. They say, oh, I really want to allow rich text editing in this particular field type. So if you click on modify field settings and you click on the drop down here, this says, okay, we can change this to a text field, which means it's a single line of text, or to a smart doc field type, which means allow rich text. Now we don't change the data behind the scenes, but you've actually changed the field type in this particular case now to a smart doc. And now I have all the rich formatting type options that are available. Each field type that you go into has a list of fields that it can be changed to. So if I click on this case, the priority, which is a single select list, it's telling me that I could change this to a text field if I wanted to. Any of these text types, I could also change it to a multi-select list, or I could change this to be displayed as a tag. In each case, it doesn't change the data. It's just changing how the data is displayed. A single select is displayed more as a pill, but if I change it to text, it's just going to convert that pill to just text that you're going to see up there. So that's the same. Each field type that we offer will have its own list of fields that you could change to, and we try to keep you from making bad decisions with changing it. But it's pretty common for people to come in and change things from like a date field to say, I want it to be displayed like a due date as opposed to just a regular date. I'll show you the difference in just a minute. Does that help answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to jump back out just so that we're not adding all of these fields. And I've added a bunch of field types that I wanted to just talk through so you can see them in a view. Following that exact same structure that I put across the top. So in this case, what's pretty common is how you want to display due date field types. So I'm going to click in here and say I want to modify the field settings for the due date. Here are the different options from the compact, standard, and long form where I could actually display it. I'm not going to update the field, but you could see how I could change that on the fly. I could also change this just to a regular date field. The difference between a due date and a date is a due date, we actually keep track of, we link the due date to the status. And if the status is not showing that it's been marked complete, we're showing you that, hey, this still needs to be done. And in this case, with the date range that we picked, it's telling me that it's due in 85 days. This one is due in 14 days. Once you go over 3 weeks, we just show you happy or sad faces as opposed to the numbers that's there. So you see this one's 15 days, this one's 120 days, this one's 16 days. The red means it's past due, and the yellow means that it's due, and the green with the check mark shows you that it's actually been completed. So you can see I changed this status to complete, and it actually changed this status here. So if I come over here to this one that's in process, I mark it as complete. We'll also update the status for me at the same time. See it here. What we do though is we track, for project managers, we track to let you know if this was completed, but maybe it was completed after the due date. So in this particular case, it's showing a red dot. And when I hover over this, it tells me it was completed, but it was completed 16 days after the assigned due date that was there. If I don't want all this information, I just pick a regular date field that's there. And a due date, the only difference between a due date and a date is that a due date is linked to a status field. And in the status field itself, modify, you're telling us which one of the statuses means that something has actually been completed that's there. So we give you a starting point, and we always include one called complete, and we mark it, but you can change it to anything else that you would want. So the field types that we have here are pretty standard. The first one is just our title field that's available. For a title field, there's just a couple of unique things that you can do. Most people, we call this a record title. You allow your users just to manually input a name of a title that's in there. And you can determine if you want this to be required and if you want this to be unique, meaning they have to enter a title and each title has to be unique. If you're doing tasks, sometimes they're not all unique, so you might want to turn that off that's there. In some cases, you may want the title to be auto-generated based on other fields of information that you've entered on the form. So the user doesn't actually enter the title, but I can go in and say yes, and I could click on this little plus. It shows me all the different fields that are available, and I can basically concatenate and create a title field maybe based on an auto number, the hyphen, and maybe based on the project manager, the project, whatever it might be. So I can create anything custom here that I want to be displayed in the data. I'm going to change it back to manual. Just exit. When I drill into this record, if this was turned on to be auto-generated, this field would just be read-only. And as I make selections in these other fields, it would then create this title for me in real time. That's there. What's most common here is that the auto number field type that's been turned on up here, this 001. A lot of people like to maybe show that as in the name and then bring in the customer or the project or the due date, different things that help you quickly understand just by looking at the title what might need to get done there. The second field type here is just an assign to field type that's in the list. There's a couple of different ways that you can display an assign to from just an avatar, or you can show the name of the person that's there. And you can allow either single or multiple selections. When you're setting that up, we default to single. And the assign to field includes a listing of all users that are in your account that have access to this particular solution that's in place. So we try to, if you're in an account with 1,000 users, but only 100 have access to this solution, we only show you the people that have access to this particular that's in place. The progress field type is pretty common. This just allows you to come in and set a range, and then the users can select from within that range. We do modified settings, number slider. We give you a couple different ways that you can display the sliders that's in there. Most people gravitate towards medium, so that's why we have it as the default that's there. And then we allow you to actually enter values. So if you want the range to be between 20 and 50, you could set it. By default, it starts at 0 and just goes to a max of 100. And we do increments of 1. But you could say, I want to show my increments in sets of 5, just to make it easier for the selections just to jump and to run reports based on that. For the number slider field, since it's a number field, I could convert to any other type of number field on the fly, because it's just a number that's stored in the database. Or I could convert this to a text field that's there as well. The document field type just allows you to enter a series of documents. It's pretty simple. That's here. Basically just turn it on, and then we do all the magic behind the scenes. In this case, I don't have a document, so I'm going to click add new right from the grid. Let me go back one and show you here. So these are all the different places that you can auto pull documents from. Most people pull them from their device, but if you use Dropbox or Box or Google Drive, OneDrive, you just authenticate and you can pull files directly from there. You can also add links to files that you may have in place. You can pull from pictures that you have or take a photo in real time on your computer. And then you can also go to Unsplash. Unsplash allows you to search through a person. These are free images that are available for anybody to use. So if you're doing graphics and you're just looking for free images for different things, you can just pull them in directly from Unsplash. All the license and everything is already taken care of for you. When you go to display a listing of files, a couple unique things happen in the product. The first is if you display them in a card view and you pick card view as the style, we auto recognize that there's attachment fields in this particular application. And we ask you, would you like to display a cover image? So by default, it's off. I could come in here and say, yes, I would like to display, in this case, the deliverable files that we have. If there's more than one, you just hover on the card and we'll show you, you can flip through each of the images in real time. So in this case, it's actual images. And then if it's documents, you can click on the documents. If I click on the download, it will just download and throw that in the footer down here as a downloaded item. If I want to view everything, I click on the icon at the top and it just takes me into gallery mode where I can click and view everything in a bigger format, but I could also come in and do the same thing of I could download the file. And we have an update tomorrow that you can download all files associated with this record by just clicking all files at the same time as well. With the field type, we also track the date that it was created, last modified, the size, dimensions, different things, and you can change how you want the background to actually be displayed in gallery mode. We also allow you to enter slide mode. So if you're doing a presentation or at a trade show and you just have a series of images that you want to rotate, you can just turn the slideshow piece that's on. I didn't pick great images for that, but kind of see the example. Let's here, go back to the projects. We talked about the stage or the status. The name for this would probably, we're calling it stage, but it's really just a typical status field type. What you can do with almost every field type that you add to a solution is you can click on defaults here, and I can set a series of defaults that when a new record is created, I want this information entered in that particular record. This only relates to new records, so we won't go back and change any records that have already been created that might have an empty value. It only relates to any record that would be created moving forward. It's more common to use, the status is pretty common. Go back to that. A lot of people like to set the default status to backlog, and I don't have one in here. But when a new record is created, it just shows backlog and it goes into a particular report just based on that, meaning something needs to happen. Somebody needs to take a look to make a decision on this. Some of the other interesting field types that we have I'll show under task that are here. So you see a lot of the pretty similar items to what we just looked at. You can see this is a single select field with just a color dot. This is a single select field that's actually using an image, and they've picked the color of the items in the actual image to be shown. I think I'll find one in a minute that actually, when you turn on descriptions, anytime that a user goes to make a selection, it shows the description below the name of the field to make it easy for them to know maybe what selection to make or what the different values mean to you. Subtask here is a field type that is, I'm going to click here just in inline edit. And it's showing me here's a list of the subtasks associated with this. And any field type that's available when you create a solution, you can modify the fields directly via inline edit. And I could add a new task. When I add something to a checklist, I can give it a due date. And I can assign this to somebody or not. I could just make it, I could just have a task, but it's not assigned to anybody. But what just happened when I assign this to myself is I just got notified in my notification panel. And in my work panel, it will now also show that this particular task is assigned to me and due on this due date. As I make changes to these, as I mark things off, you'll see that the bar across the top changes. So we auto calculate the % complete based on all the subtasks. The checklist items is what we call this field type, all the things that have been complete. There's no limit on the number of items you could add. You could also move things around in the checklist to get the right order that you would want that's there. So I'm not going to save those, but I'm going to drill into the record, and you'll see here are those same subtasks. Just going to add it that's here. If I want to modify this field type or add a new one, it's more common under the defaults to actually come in here, and maybe you have a series of things that needs to get done every time for this particular work item that you're doing. So I could add in as many items as I want. And these, when a new record is created, I will have this list ready to go for me. A checklist is really a little less formal type of task of something that needs to be completed. If you want something more formal, you use the assign to field that's here with the owner. So I could assign this overall task to myself. It has a due date. It has a status if it's complete. And then I can track these a little less formal if I want. Check back in real quick. Any questions up to this point? Okay, I'll keep going with tasks. So there's a third level of assignments that can be done. I can, inside of any record that I've created, you have a built-in channel where you can have discussions that are specific to this work element that's here. So I could just type in anything that I wanted and post it. Now, anybody that has access to this record can actually see this and can come in and add a reply that's in here. but I could do something that's a little more formal. So if I wanted to @mention Tara in this case, and I say, I need you to go do X, Y, Z, when I hit, as soon as I @mention Tara, it said, okay, do you want to actually assign this to Tara, or are you just mentioning her in something? Either way, she'll be notified. If I say I want to assign it to her and I go ahead and click send, she just got notified in her notification panel and her My Work panel that something's been assigned to her. When she comes into this record, she'll see that this particular item was assigned, and only her and the person that created it, myself in this case, could mark this as resolved. Other people can see it and reply to it, but the only person that could actually mark it as complete would be Tara or myself. So when I mark it as complete, it comes out of the open comments, but it's maintained in the resolved comments element. So you always have a history of all those work items if you want. This is very common. Like in our case with our development team, they're assigned work. They have questions on the work. They'll enter comments and we'll have discussions inside of the actual record that's here. So we have all of the context that's there. Sometimes things are assigned. Sometimes we're just making decisions as a group that's here. And then for any item that's in here, other people can come in and actually add comments or add emojis on things. It's pretty common for people just to throw in a thumbs up to say, I've read it. I've got it. That's there. And then I can copy a link to this and send it to somebody in an email, Slack channel, whatever it might be. And when they click on the link, they come directly into SmartSuite. They come right to this work element, and my comments panel opens up to show them this particular item that's here. The other element that you're probably already familiar with is just the activity history that's associated with every field type. So that just happens by default. So every field that you add is tracked, and then every modification to that field by any person is tracked by date and time. And then you can open up and actually see that the changes that I just made here today. We do two other things on the record. So at the bottom of the record, of every record that's here, we track the last time that this record has been updated. So if it was just created, it would just be that create date. I can hover over the person and actually see a link back to their profile. And that's the case with any time that you see an avatar of a user, you can click on that anywhere in the product and see their profile. And if I wanted to see the full profile, it just opens up the help panel on this, or the member directory on the side for me. Some things that are pretty common with field types that are here, or the display of pages when you're setting up a solution. So once you organize the information, and this is pretty typical of how things are organized in all of our templates, or when you would set something up from scratch, but you can change the page display settings on this. So I could say, maybe I want this to be super simple and I just want everything in a single column. You could do that. Or you could say, hey, I'd really like to see this more in a 70-30. This is really useful when you have a series of fields that you have a lot of text or a lot of links to other applications or things like Subtask that you want to take up the main area, and then you take all of the smaller elements and put them on the right. A lot of project managers like this particular format just for managing project tasks that are there as well, but it's completely up to you on the style. When you change the format, it changes the format for everybody. So this isn't user specific. You're setting this for this particular solution that you've set up. And the last main field type that I want to show you is in the list here, you can see where I've linked to deliverables and to status reports. So I'm under task. And when I click into a task record, I can see a deliverable and a status report. I'm just going to add those over in my report so I can see them as well. But when I drill in, a linked record has multiple display types that you can look at. So in this case, this task is linked back to this Aon project. If I say I want to modify the field settings here, you get the same display options as most of the other field types. So in this case, I've said, I just want a very simple standard display that just shows on a single line and only includes the name of the project in this case. But I could change it to say, I want it to spread the full length of the page and display the name, but I want to pick some other fields that I might want to have displayed to the right in a small format. Simplified does the same thing, where you have the name at the top, takes up a little more space and adds the additional fields below the name. And then we have the expanded display, which it brings in even more detail and makes this a little bigger that's here. So I'm going to go into status reports where you can see some of these options. So this is option A that was there with the compact display. When I pull that up, you can see that I picked the compact display, but I also haven't picked any fields to display on the right. I'm just showing the name. If I want to pick the fields, I just come in here and say, these are the fields maybe that I want to be displayed when I open that up. And then on the field, then over here, it will just show those. Or I could change the status in real time, or the display type in real time. And I'm just going to pick the extended display. Forgot to pick the field, sorry. So we'll say auto number, first created, date submitted, and maybe a link to the projects. So you can see how the information just changes in real time. This also changes for every person when you make it, the change. If you have just a few records and you want to see more information on what you're linking to, this is the style most people like to use. If you are looking at a list that maybe has 10 or more things on it, it's more common to use one of the compact type display types. My favorite is actually the fully compact mode that we have here. When I hover over one of these linked records, I can just click and it takes me right to that record to look at. And I can click back out of that and I'm right back in. Maybe I want to look at the next one that I'm there. In this particular record, there's another link back to project task. I could click on that. And you can see that I could go as many levels deep as I want to as I'm reviewing something, and then I can go back one level at a time to where I'm at. It also allows you, if there's a linked record in this piece here, you can go right to that. In this case, I want to go right to the project file. We're coming close on time. I just want to show a couple more things. There's some of the more interesting field types maybe have to do with count and roll up. So I'm going to come in here, explore field types. Maybe I want to do a count of something that's in another record. So I don't have to write a formula. It's already written for us. You can pick the display type and color. Maybe I want to show a listing of open task, and I will pick the projects to it. I'm just going to pick milestone. I can add filters here. So maybe I only want to see a list of things that have a status of open. So I can determine using rules how I want to actually display that. And then when I add that, it just adds an account looking back at that. So I can see in this particular case, there's 20 items that's there. So it's just a really fast way to do a calculation, but we display it a little more visually before we give you more control over that. I can do the same thing for a roll-up, where I want to roll up information that's in another record. A roll-up would be interesting for things like invoices, where I have sub-items and I want to see all of those pulled from another record that's here. A lookup field allows me to actually look up a value in any other application in the solution, whether it's in my projects or somewhere else. So in this case, let's say I want to look up a value from deliverables. It says, which field do you want to actually display here? Maybe I want to look at let's look at the due date. Doesn't make a lot of sense here. But now it just pulled that field from somewhere else into this record. It's read-only. I can't do anything with it, but it's displayed. And now I can use that in different reports that I may have in place. A couple more things here I just want to talk about are the different view types that are available. We've been spending a lot of time on grid. Card view here just allows you to organize information on cards. You can play with the size of the cards in real time to get to the display format that you want. And if you can choose, if there's one or more attachment fields, you can determine if you want to display those cover images that are here. You can change the view type for a particular report by just clicking on the view type and saying, I want to change this. And now it's changing this view that anybody that would have access to this that's looking would also change this view for them. So you don't have to create a new report that has all the same fields. I can either copy this one, change the view, or just change the view. Kanban view just allows me to move information between columns. And as I move things, it actually updates that record. In this case, the assignment from myself to Tara just happened in real time behind the scenes for me. On the calendar view, the system's smart enough to know any date field that you've entered, and it allows you to pick then which date you want to display on the calendar. We have a feature that is coming out tomorrow that allows you to take multiple calendar views that you have anywhere in your account and display them on a single place. So maybe I want to see projects from this project, but maybe from something else as well, all in a single calendar. So I could pick each of those calendars and display them here. A timeline is just a different view type, also based on a date field, that are more typically used when you're looking at ranges of things that need to get done. And I can move inside of the timeline. I can move and change this date, and it actually updates the date and the record associated with that in real time. A map view, we do not have a date or an address field in here, and that's what it's telling us. But if the system's also smart enough to know that anytime you've entered an address, it will allow you to auto display that address directly inside of a Google map that's here, with quite a number of different options you can set for that. And then the last one is chart. We have lots of different chart types. In this particular case, maybe I want to do area chart. We don't have great information to display here, but there's some unique features that you can add. One is I can do totals. So maybe I want to do a total of a sum of in progress that's in here and see how it adds the total over here. So it allows me to sum, or and let's look at progress again. Maybe this time I want to see the average that's in here. It allows me to add totals to my chart to help me understand the data that I'm looking at in real time. I could also add benchmark lines that I could maybe say that this is the goal, and the goal is, in this case, 1.5. I could pick the color that I want. So it just adds benchmarks to any reports that are here. And then last thing I could do is add dynamic filters. A dynamic filter maybe based on a date is pretty common. So as I'm looking at this particular report, I don't have to change any settings. The user could just come in and say, I'm only interested in this month versus maybe last month or the last 3 months that's in place. So it just makes it easier to analyze the data. And this is what it would look like kind of in real time. That's there. And there's just two other report types I want to show in the last 2 minutes here. The first is a dashboard. To create a dashboard, it's just a view type. You come in, if you haven't created one yet, you just click here on add a widget. The most commonly used types of widgets on dashboards are metrics. So we put those at the top here, where a comparison metric is I want to compare a value from this period to a prior period, and I want to see if I'm doing better or worse on that. And a progress metric is showing me maybe I have a stated goal over a period of time, and it's showing me the progress against that stated number that I've put in place. It's also the second most commonly used is just a series of charts with all that information that I just showed you. But then there's unique things like if I'm a project manager and I'm having a Google meeting every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I could just add the Google link directly in the dashboard and people just click on that, or Zoom link. If you're a designer, you can have your design files actually show up there. You can take any Google products and actually put them in a widget, and maybe I have a Google Doc, and you can actually view and edit that doc in real time inside of the dashboard itself. Pretty common for project files, those types of things. And then fun things like countdown widgets towards dates. I can embed any web page, basically any other web page you can embed in real time. And then the same thing with social media, video, lots of fun stuff. So if I wanted to add like a progress metric, I just click to add it. You pick where I want to pull the data from. I can pull data from this particular solution, but I could also pull data from any other solution that's there. I can give the metric value. What am I trying to actually do? I'm going to maybe do a sum here, and I'll put a goal of 100. Let's change the goal 300. So you can see how it kind of calculates in real time. Maybe I want to change it to red. If I click add widget, it just puts it on the dashboard for me. I can size and move this around however I want. I can view it in two ways. I can minimize this. If I had a whole bunch of metrics and I didn't want to see them until I actually clicked to open, I could also then view this in full screen, which just takes you right back to the full screen. And if you have the ability to modify the settings, you just click settings to do the modification here in real time. And then the last one that I want to show you is a new one called form. This allows you to create a form that can be completed by somebody outside of SmartSuite. You can host this on the website, or you can send them a link to this form. And as they add data in the form, it automatically brings data into SmartSuite for you. The project's not a great example, but I'll show you the concept. Here's all the fields that are available in this project. So I could maybe say, hey, I want to add each of these over to the form. I can determine the order that I want the items. I could add a form name, description. And when I'm ready, I can share this form. And so there's two ways to share it. I can send a link, or I can actually embed this as an iframe on a web page that maybe says complete this information and click submit. I'm going to click here. It's just going to show me how this form actually looks when the end user sees it. And as they complete the information, here's all the selections that were available when I click submit and go back in. We'll go back into projects. You can see it just added that into projects for me. And that is as fast as I could demo how to create and manage solutions in 1 hour. We went through quite a bit of stuff, but any questions before we go?
I don't have any. Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. We went through a lot today. But appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.